Welcome, Fanitarium listeners. Today we have a voice actress on, one that we have not had on before. We have a voice actress on, Emily Eiden, sorry.
We just talked about this.
We totally did.
Emily Eiden, who I know my co-host loves most for Voltron, because she is a Voltron fanatic.
Shut up.
But she has done lots of other voice work, including audiobooks, which we love hearing them, as well as with commercials and all the even science observatory work, haven't you as well?
I have. I worked at I narrate the planetarium shows at Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles. I've been doing that a long time.
That's one of the giant dome ones, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think I've been there. That's awesome.
I'm gonna nerd out about that.
Los Angeles, if you come to Los Angeles, you kind of have to. You kind of have to come visit.
I think it reminded me. I thought I was going to the White House the first time I saw it as a kid. I'm like, that's not the White House, but it looks like a White House with a dome.
My background on my computer at work is the Griffith Observatory at night, because it's one of the most magical things. It's just so beautiful. And I lived in LA for a year when I was a teenager, and every time people walk by, they're like, "Is that a church?" I'm like, for some people.
And it's on top of the hill, and it has a great view.
Yeah.
It sort of has I really have worked there a long time, and I held on to the job because it's amazing. And it is like walking into work each time. It feels, you sort of still feel that like, oh, it's amazing. It's beautiful. So I love it. And I love seeing all the people who come visit from all over the world. They, seeing that reaction on their face as well. It's pretty cool.
The grandeur of the whole thing. It feels like when people ask, is it a church? I feel like, well, for some people, because going there does kind of feel like a religious experience to a certain degree. But that's my poetic heart doing its thing, that I'm like, it's just so beautiful and everything's so lovely. Yeah, I
agree with all that.
I went to school right in the thick of it, right in Hollywood, and then lived in Burbank. So that was like right where I would go often. So we'd always just like hike up there and then hike back down. It was 17-year-old me.
Neat. Well, when you come visit, I'll probably still be doing the show. So.
I hope so. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So when you do stuff like for the observatory, do you ever do it live, like where you're there in person, or do you just always send in the recording and have them play it on their giant, the videos and so on as they do it?
No, it is a live show, and so so it's live every time I do it.
Okay.
There's a crew of us, probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 of us who narrate the show. So depending on when you're there, like you'll see a different person do it. And although it's a scripted show, so it's the same show each time, but there's a lot of diversity in our ranks. So, there's the people with the big deep voices. There's me who's like talking like this, and there's, there's a whole range of things. So you get a different experience, I think, depending on who's doing the show. And the director of the observatory, Ed Krupp, he's been very devoted to always having a live person in the planetarium, because he believes, and I believe as well, that it really sort of makes the audience sit up and pay attention and really feel, you're sort of having this collective experience talking about the universe together in a way that you might not get if there's, Whoopi Goldberg just narrating it, which I've heard her narration of a planetarium show, and it's great. It's just different. It's just totally different.
There's less theater in it.
Yeah.
It's more Star Trek.
Yeah, and there's also, because it's live, we can change the script if the science, the science kind of to make a change to the scientific information we're giving. That they don't sort of do that every time there's a new headline, but they can if they really need to change something in the information. We can. We just we get an email that's like, change this, and then we do. So that's cool too.
That's really exciting.
How many performances do you do like a week then?
I used to do a lot more. I used to be there sort of pretty regularly. And so then I might be doing in sort of at the height of things for me, I probably might do 10 to 15 shows a week. But now, as sort of my acting career has, taken off more, and I have 2 kids, I'm really there like maybe once a week to once every 2 weeks for maybe like 3 shows, just to keep in it, because I do love the job and I love doing those performances. But I have other things I'm working on as well. So, but I think some of the people are there, maybe 8 to 10 shows a week, that sort of thing.
So what is the biggest difference between doing pre-recorded voiceovers and getting to do live stuff? Because I'm sure both have their like positives and negatives, and why you would rather do one right now and then the other one later.
I come from a theater background.
Okay.
That's totally my, and I grew up, literally I was like in my first show when I was 3 years old, and then like
Same.
in a play. Oh, really?
Yeah.
And then in a play, like every year after that, at least one play, so I've just always been in plays. And that was where I sort of started getting my first professional work, was in equity stage stuff. And so it's definitely my sort of first love. And I love being in front of the audience, feeling that energy from the person. But I also really, once I got into doing voice work, which came for me first through the observatory, actually, that was my very first, even though it's a sort of hybrid of, live performance and voice, that was my first thing of sort of talking on a microphone and having to get used to the sound of my voice, which that took some time, because you're just hearing yourself projected going, I really sound like that.
You hear yourself and you think, how do I have friends?
Yeah, it's that thing like when we were younger, when you'd hear yourself on an answering machine, you'd be like, oh no, I hate that,
no.
But you get, and then I got used to it, and sort of, now I know what my voice sounds like. I have no issues with it at this point, but I had to get used to that. So that was my first voice thing. Then from there I got into doing audiobooks, and then eventually sort of, took voiceover classes, made a demo, got an agent, started auditioning a lot, and, started booking some stuff. And so the question you asked was about sort of the difference between, doing it live and doing something pre-recorded. I guess my answer is they're both cool. I like that with something recorded, there's a little bit more, if I mess up, I literally can just start again and sort of fix that. At the same time, there's also kind of like I did it and it's done. I'm just going to send that out there, and I'm not going to obsess over getting it totally right every time. Like, you're just sort of like, well, that was my spontaneous performance and I hope it moves somebody. With a live performance, there's just a lot more rehearsal in it. And so while you're also still sort of hoping to give that, spontaneous magic performance in the moment, you also have really prepared for that. So like with the observatory shows, I've been doing it for years. So I've probably done, 1,000 performances of the show. And the main show that we do, it's called Centered in the Universe, and it's just a beautiful show. And for me, like, the fun of that one is because I've done it so many times, finding what is exciting every time on this 1,000th performance. That's a challenge, but also a real gift. Like, it's a real neat thing to still be excited by that show and know that like people in the audience have never seen the show. And so I still get excited when I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to really love this part that's coming up. I see people in the audience pointing as the, projector comes out of the floor, because there's this moment where it rises out of the floor to project the stars. It's amazing.
No, that's awesome.
And seeing the people start pointing and go, look, I see that. Like, I get excited when I see that. So I'm not sure I've totally answered your question.
No, it's
except
great.
To say I love them both. And the voiceover thing sort of has been good for me with my family. I have 2 kids under the age of 4. And so,
Here.
Yeah, you told me you did too. Being able to go and record an episode of Voltron, say, and knowing that, well, this is going to take maybe an hour and a half, and then I'm going to be back home, see the babysitter, collect the kids, and be done with it, as opposed to like doing a play where I have to drive 50 miles to South Coast Repertory in Costa Mesa, be there all day, come back, drive another, 2 hours in traffic, be back at 8:00 at night. Like, that's a hard schedule to maintain with a family, whereas voiceover for me has really made it great for me to be able to still pursue acting, feel very satisfied and fulfilled, you know, by what I'm able to do as an actor and have time to be with my kids and my husband. So there's
that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So I have some questions about your theater work. First one is I just look on here and it says, "What the heck is Junie B and Jingle Bells Batman Smells?"
That's it's a series of books, the Junie B. Jones.
I love those books when I was a kid. Oh my gosh, I ate those up.
They're super cute. It's a whole series, and so a lot of the shows I've done in the last number of years have been for what are called theater for young. They're theater for young audience shows, and which basically means they're kid shows. But they're very sort of high quality, trying not to talk down to any kids. It's a very I've done most of those at South Coast Rep and another theater called Main Street Theater Company, and they just do really wonderful work. So Junie B. Jones is sort of on the sillier side of some of those kids shows I've done, and in that show I played the villain. I played May, who was like a probably 8-year-old villain. And so that was fun because I was there to, foil Junie B. Jones at every turn. But then, of course, at the end, you learn that May really just is misunderstood and really just wants to be friends with all those other kids. And that's why she's acting out in the way she is. And, you learn some nice lessons of how to interact with other kids. And so that's what I've liked about doing shows like that, is there's always you sort of learn more about how to be a good person from these kids shows than maybe from other, more adult shows.
We have a theater group here in town in Anchorage that does one of the theater for young persons once a year. And a friend did Fancy Nancy last year. Yes. So cute. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. And I love her to death. My friend who was in it calls me and she was like, "I can't do ballet." Even little kid ballet, I can't do it. And I was like, "No, you're gonna be fine." She was like, "No, I can't do ballet." So it's fun. They did a Pinkalicious a couple years ago. Like, I love seeing those shows they put together that are meant for kids, but like you said, doesn't talk down. They're not patronizing. They're fun. They're a good start for life theater for children, because you can't plop a kid down in Oklahoma and expect them to stay there.
Right.
Once the songs are over, they're done. Like, that's it.
No, I'm excited because one of my kids is just old enough to start seeing plays. And so they came to to 2 plays I did when she was really little, but I'm excited to start taking her to shows. And
that's so exciting.
Yeah.
One of my nieces, when I was in high school, we had a big old production of Beauty and the Beast that Jeremiah actually had a cameo in, and my 4-year-old niece at the time. I showed up and they
put me in the mob.
Yep.
No, they put me in Gaston's song.
In Gaston's song. Funny. My 4-year-old niece sat through the whole show, and just was awesome. She was spellbound the whole time, and now she's an adult who's a professional dance team dancer.
Oh, neat.
So I'm like, I don't want to say it's my fault, but I gave her the
I think
idea.
It is. I think it is. Totally is.
But no, that's really exciting. How fun.
And Jeremiah's fault. She may have been
right. It may have been that show.
So I noticed also on there that you've done Moonlight and Magnolias twice with 2 different theater groups. What's it like doing the same play under different direction with different people, but having the same role?
Well, okay. Well, so that was an interesting one because actually I did that one. It was sort of the same production, but also, so I can answer your question because there were differences and things that were the same. It started at a theater called Laguna Playhouse in Laguna Beach, which was awesome because you spend, 8 weeks. They give you an apartment and you stay 8 weeks at Laguna doing your play. And it's a really fun play that's about the writing of Gone with the Wind.
Oh.
And so the premise is that the writer, the director, and the producer, Ben Hecht, Selznick, and Victor Fleming, all needed to fix Gone with the Wind. It was going badly, the shooting of it. And so they were like, we have to fix it. So they locked themselves in the room for, several days and eventually came out with the final script for Gone with the Wind. I think it's, sort of based in truth, and they've made it absurd as well, like the whatever kernel of truth there was in that story. So I played the secretary to David O. Selznick and Miss Poppingle, and it was not a huge part, but it was kind of a really important part for me because I learned quite a lot about like comedy from that show. And so anyway, so it was at Laguna, but it was a co-production with another theater called McCoy Rigby Entertainment. Kathy Rigby from the Olympics, like she has a theater company in Southern California, and they do amazing shows. And so it was a co-production with them. And so we sort of performed in Laguna. Then we moved the show to McCoy Rigby in La Mirada is where it is, and did that show there. And then like a year and a half later, the show had been such a hit that the Colony in Burbank was like, come back and do the show for us. And so we ended up, it was the same like costumes, the same set, the same director. And then of the 4 actors, 2 of us were in the production at the Colony in Burbank, and 2 of the actors were no longer available. So we had 2 new actors. So what happened was like that first production that did it at the 2 theaters had just been a super tight little, ensemble. We'd sort of really figured out how to do that show. It was just, it was very fast. The comedy was like, da 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 like this. You're talking. When I say that I like learned a lot about comedy is because my character, like, most of her lines were just, yes, Mr. Selznick. No, Mr. Selznick. Yes, Mr. Selznick. So me, the actress, came into it and was like trying to make every line so interesting. I was like, yes, Mr. Selznick. No, Mr. Selznick. Yes, Mr. Selznick.
This is taking me back to acting schools. Like, if you say the same word twice, change it.
So I was totally doing that. And I remember at one point, Andy Barnacle, the director, who's a wonderful director, at one point in rehearsal, he said, just say it fast. Just say it fast. Just say it fast. Like same way every time. And I'm like, what? How can I do that? But I'm an actress. How can I just say it? And so he's like, just try it. Just try it. And so it ended up being, so I was like, okay. And, so Selznick was just peppering these lines at me. He'd be like, have you done this? Yes, Mr. Selznick. Have you done this? Yes, Mr. Selznick. Yes, Mr. Selznick. Yes, Mr. Selznick. No, Mr. Selznick. Like it ended up being very much like that. And suddenly people were laughing. Like it was crazy because like for me, I wanted it to be interesting. And what I learned was sometimes you just have to serve the comedy. Like sometimes you just have, and it turned out it was funnier to just, and that to sort of really just hit it. Yes, Mr. Selznick. Yes, Mr. Selznick. And then when I had something else to say, it sort of made it more interesting to suddenly change it up. And when I'd been, just sort of shooting off these lines. Anyway, that's the side note of sort of what I had learned about comedy in that. But to go back to the question about changing theaters, doing these 2 different productions, it did end up, even though it seemed like it was just going to be the same show again once we moved it to Burbank like a year or a year and a half later, it did end up being really different because 2 of the guys were different. And so it totally changed the rhythm. The Mr. Selznick was different. So my rhythm with that guy, we sort of had to relearn our own little new rhythm. And it was a much smaller space. So that kind of changed just the energy in the room. And they were both fun. It was fun. Like all the productions we did of it were fun and different. So we had to, where we went into the Colony Burbank production thinking, we've done this. We know how to do this. We sort of had to go, oh, I guess we have to, this is kind of a new production. So we have to come back to the table, figure it out and make it funny for this production. And I think we did. It was fun. It was really fun.
I figure touring productions probably feels somewhat the same way as far as like, okay, now the space is slightly different. So-and-so's sick, so this person's filling in. Like there's a little bit of growing pain, I figure, but it's definitely a good thing because it's like, okay, I'm still on my toes. I'm not getting comfortable. I'm still in it.
Yeah. I've never done a tour like that, but I would imagine you're right. Yeah.
I was in a production this spring, and it was the first time I've ever had to sign a contract that said we reserve the right to revive this show for a year afterwards.
Oh.
And I was like, what? This is very serious suddenly. I don't understand. And they were like, oh, we also reserve the right to extend the show, which they ended up doing. But
Oh, neat.
yeah, 8-week run. That was fun.
Cool.
Yeah, keep you on your toes. But so you've done a bunch of different kind of acting, which is so interesting and super cool. Is there any bit of advice that anyone's given you as an actor that has like spanned time and over all the different kinds of acting that when you're, stuck, all you can think about is this one thing and it helps you like move on and grow as an actor?
Oh, you've stumped me
Sorry,
now.
I didn't mean to.
No. I grew up, I started acting in plays that my parents directed at the like junior theater in Whittier, where I'm from. And so most of my sort of like, learning about theater and acting and everything actually comes from my parents, which is cool and
That's really
and
cool.
neat. So yeah, and so I think, I mean, I'm not sure if they, were like, here's some advice. But what I got from them that I would take as advice is just sort of like knowing that you have to, I mean, it's pretty basic. It's just kind of the like working hard and staying at it and not taking anything too personally, because it's pursuing acting, like acting for fun is amazing. It's really cool and fun and fulfilling. And, that's how I grew up, was just acting in the junior theater for fun. Like I never, was thinking like I'm going to be an actress or I'm going to go to an audition in Hollywood. Like there was never any of that when I was little. It was literally just for fun. And so for me, I think if you then are going to pursue it, you sort of have to remember why you like it, but also know that there's going to be so much else. Like the business parts of acting are going to end up being consuming almost more of your time than acting is, and so I would recommend that people sort of make themselves as well-rounded as possible, I guess. There's So I went to college and I was a history major in college, actually.
Yay, me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, World War II cinema and the Office of War Information was my focus.
Oh, okay. I was ancient and medieval Mediterranean history, focusing on like saints and like medieval saints and that sort of thing.
I took so much Europe in the High Middle Ages. Oh my gosh. So fun. Sorry.
No, it's great. And so that's a good example. Like I didn't think I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, like when I got out of college, but I wanted to be able to do whatever I wanted to do. And I was still, I was acting at school, but I also loved the history parts of things. So I just think like sort of, pursuing that academic part of college was helpful, because like I think I can write pretty well, so I can express myself if I need to write some important emails, asking someone for work or whatever as an actor. But I've got that sort of business side of things down pretty well. The other thing I think that has, made acting fun for me, because it can be so disappointing and it can be just so disheartening to audition so much, and then you get something every once in a while, and hopefully it's cool and really exciting, but mostly you're just auditioning and hearing no. So for me, I think what made it fun was to sort of not hit my head against the wall. Like if one part of acting wasn't working for me so well, I just kind of followed whatever was working. And so, when I first got out of college, I was like pursuing everything, on camera. Well, I wasn't pursuing voice, actually. I was pursuing, on camera acting and stage acting. And suddenly I started getting cast in stage stuff. And, I was going to get my equity card and like all this stuff. But, my SAG card was, who knows, I had no idea how I was going to get a SAG card, like, because I wasn't booking things on camera. But anyway, I didn't like fret about it too much. I just kind of followed the stage stuff. And that eventually sort of took me into doing some really awesome like stage work. And I met lots of awesome people. And at the same time, because I'd been a history major in college, my like acting job that or not my day job that I'd gotten. I had 2 day jobs, and one was I worked for a lawyer for many years as his legal secretary, and the other was I had sat down and thought, what could combine my history major with my acting experience? And I ended up getting a job as like a museum guide at the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles. And I would lead tours and do snake presentations and dig for like real dinosaur bones. I mean, that was like the coolest job. But eventually, as my acting career started to heat up more, I needed more daytime availability. So a friend at that job said, why don't you go work at the observatory? Because they are open at night. You can work at night if you need to. And so I got a job there as a museum guide, answering astronomy questions. And then eventually, like, a job opened up to do the planetarium shows. I auditioned, got that job. And then it was through friends from theater who knew I was doing the planetarium shows, who suggested me to some audiobook people. That's how I sort of then moved into doing audiobooks, and then really found that voiceover was like where people were like giving me work, and I sort of wished I had pursued that, 5 or 10 years sooner. Because, I might have been further along, but I was just so grateful that eventually I realized, like, voiceover is now my path to follow. And so that's where I kind of am now, is not necessarily fretting about what I'm not doing acting wise, like what, on camera stuff I might not be doing. Should I be doing that? I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just like, wow, voiceover is so cool. Like, I get to audition for this. Like, oh my gosh, like, there's a pilot for this I get to audition for. It's so, and then, oh my gosh, I get cast on Voltron, So I'm just excited about like the things that come along. And this is a really long answer to your question about my advice. And so I guess it's just, it's try to not like fight what's happening if you can't. I mean, obviously, if you're really unhappy, then try to make yourself, go where you want to go. But if you can, just try to go with the flow and like see where it leads. Like, that's what's made it a pretty fun career for me, I think. And at the same time, I always knew that I had like fulfilling day jobs for myself. Like, so I really liked working as the legal secretary. That was a great experience. And then I'm still here at the observatory. So I've always loved sort of doing that museum type work. And so when I wasn't, working on a play or voiceover something or an audiobook, then I had like a cool job. And it is hard to set up a job that will work with your acting career and allow you to like go leave when you need to leave. And I found that in the legal job and in the museum work. So I guess that's the other thing, is if you're going to pursue it, like, work real hard to try to, I guess, be well-rounded so that you can find a job that will help support you. So you're not completely like always dependent on like getting this job, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to pay your rent. Have that fallback job that's also kind of fulfilling. If you can do that, that's cool, I think. It's made me pretty happy.
That sounds great.
And with Voltron, you got to work on one of the last projects that probably the most famous voice director of all time,
Andrea,
did, with Andrea Romano, because she retired last year. So that was one of the last things she got to do. Did you get to work with her in that one? Were you ever to do that?
I did. Yeah. And it's funny because she was, when I first started recording Voltron, or maybe it may have just been the first episode that I did. There was kind of a break between like the first episode I recorded and like whenever they called me in for the next one. There were several months, so I didn't know if there was ever going to be another episode that I was going to do or not. And eventually, I think then when they brought me in again, she was there. So she hadn't directed that first episode I did. So she hadn't cast me, but right before I got cast in that first episode of Voltron, I had taken like a 1-day class from her, because I was like, this is Andrea Romano and there's this chance to take this class. And I thought she'd been just the most amazing teacher, and she'd, just shared some amazing tips of animation, things you do like when you're getting hit or when you're hitting, in animation. There are just all these cool things that she shared in that class. And then, fast forward less than 6 months, probably 3 months later, suddenly like I walk in and she's there like directing my episodes. And that was really a privilege. That was really exciting. And she's, she's this legend that you know about, and I'd say she in the booth, like in the, in the recording process, she lives up to it. Like she's very, she comes into the booth before you start recording and comes and shakes your hand and says hello to each person, and it's very humane. And then she's kind of amazing. Like I remember when I came in to do some ADR, to replace dialogue, like you come in to do all those like sounds that you might not have recorded in that when you were just recording the dialogue. When I came in for those sessions, she was so good at just sort of directing you through this, like, okay, now she's getting tied up by, she's getting lassoed and dragged. Like, do that sound, go. And I'd be like, and she'd, she'd sort of, in the places where I might need a little help, she'd be like, it's like, and she just knew what it should sound like to be lassoed and dragged. Like she had so much experience, and I think so much imagination that she had, like, she could tell you if you needed the help, she could tell you in an instant, try it like this. And then when you tried it, it's like, oh yeah, you're right. So she was great. I feel really lucky to have gotten to work with her before she retired.
It sounds like an awesome workshop to go to also, to have someone like that teach you some things. Like I would run out of paper and ink taking notes.
Yep.
That's fantastic. And so, Voltron is with Dreamworks Animation / I don't know if Netflix has any say in it at all, but Dreamworks. And then the other voice work you've done with Comedy Central and Cartoon Network and Scholastic and so on. Mm-hmm. Do they all have a similar, I know, there's the way SAG-AFTRA works is, there's the similar rules, but do they all have similar ways of recording, or do some of them give you more freedom to do certain things or expect more improv or whatever? What's the structure difference between Dreamworks stuff, Comedy Central stuff, and Cartoon Network and Scholastic even?
Well, at least, I mean, so with Voltron, it was almost always like a group recording. So you were there, and it was very much like, you're in there recording the episode together. And I think on all the episodes I did, there was usually somebody missing. So what, I don't know that we ever had like a totally full cast for those episodes, but it's very much like it feels more like a play, because you're all sitting there like reacting off each other. It's a little, you have to be careful not to step on each other's lines with your own voice, when you're recording voiceover, but it's still, you're feeling the energy. It's, hearing the people make the jokes, the Reese Darby is hilarious in the booth.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
At all times. I mean,
he's such a funny guy. I can't imagine.
But it was funny because, like, I remember one of the episodes, I think maybe they hadn't cast the Slav character. Do you know which character that is?
Yes.
Yes.
I think they hadn't. So they were like, "Hey, Emily, would you do a scratch track?" And so I so somewhere there's some horrid scratch version of me trying to do Slav, knowing nothing about the character. Which I just then when I saw the character, in the episodes, I thought like that's so far off from whatever I must have done. But, obviously they just needed a voice in there. But so it can be fun like that, where people are throwing in, they just say, "Hey, Josh, will you read, Cran's lines," or whoever's not there. And so it's a fun atmosphere that way. And at Dreamworks, there was like always a lot of people on the other side of the glass, there to observe, to offer, I think, ideas. Sometimes they would change the lines right in there, or like during the recording, and you'd see them all consulting and then say, "Hey, try this instead." So that was really, the Dreamworks recordings were fun. I did the stuff I did for Comedy Central. I've done some episodes for Trip Tank and a show called Mr. Pickles. Are you familiar with Mr. Pickles?
Yes. Yeah.
So you know that you would never let your children watch Mr. Pickles.
No, they go to bed before then.
Yeah. But both of those were like me alone in a booth, sort of recordings. And much more sort of like, with the creators right there. Like the Mr. Pickles one, actually the two creators were like in the booth with me and would sort of, they were very like, you asked about it, sort of improv. I don't think I improvised lines, but it was definitely like I do one, and then they'd be like, okay, now try and make your voice really, just do this like really nerdy voice. And so with them, that was fun too, because that was playing like crazy. It was just being so silly and not being able to like overthink anything. Like, oh, I can't, that voice isn't going to sound right. I would probably think that if I were alone in my own booth here at home, like I'd be overthinking, like that's going to sound so fake. Or like just play with it. Just now do this voice. Now do this voice. Now try it like this. And that was really fun. And comedy Cartoon Network was just it was more traditional, like big read, the big cast read for Clarence, everyone there together. That was fun. And Scholastic, I've done a lot with Scholastic because of the audiobooks, and so I've done a lot of audiobooks, but then they also have this arm of Scholastic Audio that does these animated videos, and yeah, it's mostly animated films. And so with them, again, it's just sort of me in a booth by myself, recording. And a lot of times it's like this on Skype, where I'm sort of hearing the directors through my headphones, because they're based in Connecticut, Scholastic. That one, there's a little more, I don't know. There's probably, because there isn't, there aren't executives on the other side of the glass. The Scholastic films, it's a little more like I kind of come up with the ideas and then say, hey, I'm going to try this. And they say, great. And I say, hey, should I make some, hippo sounds here that you could put in or things like that. Like I just did that there's a film that's coming out called Mary McScary, and it's based on R.L. Stein's picture book, Mary McScary, and also Mark Brown from the Arthur series. And so I'm Mary McScary in that. And I think it's going to be really cute. It was really fun to record, but that's an example of where there were lots of like, what if I threw in a funny cat sound here and, see if maybe that would work. And they say, yeah, let's see. And so we'll see. I don't know if they'll keep my hippo sound.
It seems to work though, because there's a lot of those Scholastic stuff are award-winning children's shorts. So, it seems to be working.
Yeah, one of the ones I did, Children Make Terrible Pets, it won the Andrew Carnegie Medal for excellence in children's video. It's like it's the big children's video award, which was really cool because I got to go to the American Library Association's like annual conference, and my family feels connected to sort of the American Library Association because my great grandma wrote a book called Caddy Woodlawn, which actually won the Newbery like in the 30s. Oh. And so what was neat was that they played my film, like Children Make Terrible Pets, at that year's Newbery Awards banquet. And so I just never felt sort of like so connected to that. We'd always been like, oh, my great grandma like won a Newbery. It's so cool. Like we've always been so proud of that. But then to actually be in the room where they were giving like that year's Newbery Award and then have my voice projected all over, in the banquet hall, like it was really special, really, really a neat thing. And it's just so funny that sort of like this audiobook connection had brought me to that moment. It was really neat.
Awesome. And I noticed also on your resume you have narration for Disney. And when I see this, it's usually like we've had like Steven Stanton on, who does it for like Disneyland, where he does like the narrator in like Thunder Mountain or something. What Disney narration would this be, or can you not talk about it because Disney snipers are somewhere? I've done some like audiobooks for them. There's one called Part-Time Mermaid, and then another one by the same author called Part-Time Princess. And then I did like this was years ago when I first got started in voiceover. I did these like Disney English
things. And so I don't even know, I don't even know where I would find them. Like I've never heard the Disney English, but it was a lot of like, it was like, L is for Lilo. S is for Stitch. B is for Baloo. It was that sort of thing. And then there were like little, I don't know what they were, but they were little stories, that I think would go with some sort of e-learning module or something. But I just remember the ABCs with all the characters. That's the thing I remember most from that
That's
project.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's
it was
cool.
fun.
Yeah. It also like the little books like my kids have because they have or like the little sound ones where you hit the buttons and it just makes a noise or says something when you're reading the book.
Yeah, it was probably like that. It was a long time ago, so I'm not entirely sure.
I know.
Go ahead.
I noticed your special skills. There's one I just have to ask about.
Yes.
Have you ever
gosh, the
gotten to
special
use your
skills.
snake, arachnid, and insect handler skill in any of your projects yet?
Well, no, I keep hoping, but no. That comes from my days working at the Natural History Museum, because I literally, that was a full-time job for me, and so every day I would have an animal presentation of some sort that I would do, and often I did. It was usually like at least two animal presentations throughout the day, and so it was we had a 10-foot Burmese python named Jay, and we had also a 10-foot, I think, Colombian red-tailed boa named Peace. And so, I'd like bring one of them out and talk to people about them. We had an iguana named Cecil. We had tarantulas. I would handle tarantulas, and I got trained to handle the emperor scorpion, but I never did that in public because I found that one to be, even though like the emperor scorpion actually is a pretty, they use them in all the movies because they're so kind of scary looking, but not very venomous. They're very unlikely to sting a person. I found that one a little creepy to hold.
I also worked at a science center at one point, and the only thing that kept me away from the tarantulas was when they would molt. Because their molt would look so much like them, I couldn't tell which was which, and I was like, I'm not going to make that mistake.
Yeah. I just like it, so anyway. I've never used those skills for acting except but I've always wanted to. I remember, this is a digression, but I remember once we had some praying mantids in I think they had been confiscated from someone at LAX, and so then they were sent to the Natural History Museum for the bug people to take care of. So I was holding a praying mantis, and they're very sort of alien-like and sort of slow moving, but they have those big eyes that look like they just stare straight into your soul. And I'll never forget, like, I was pretty far from the main door of what we call the Discovery Center, and like it was a very quiet day, and I was holding this praying mantis, and somebody walks into the main door, and it was not a very loud sound that they made, but I remember seeing this praying mantis turn its head like so slowly to look at the source of that sound and look at that person that had come through the door. That it was another one of those sort of like very strange, slightly creepy moments where you're going, what is this bug thinking? Like, it seems like they're really taking us in and thinking something.
That bug just put a curse on you.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
Like so I had lots of experiences like that. I loved that job so much. And if anyone's listening and needs a, praying mantis handler, I'm your gal.
Sweet, you can do a theater production where we get to hold snakes.
I know.
Snakes
fun.
Snakes are actually really lovely creatures, and I wish more people would know that because they're just so nice. Well, we had at the science center I worked at, we had ball pythons, which were on the bigger end.
Okay.
They'd been, I think they were also confiscated or surrendered by somebody, but they'd been bred to be bigger. So they were bigger than usual, but they were just, they were absolute loves. They were the sweetest things, and I loved having them around, and if I had the energy and time to maintain one, I would, but they require so much work.
It does. It would require but I feel the same way. Like, it's been a long time since I held a snake, and I do miss it, and I go back to, I've been a member at the Natural History Museum now that I have kids, and so when I go back, they don't really have those snakes anymore, but they have like a rattlesnake now, but I still sort of, I do sort of crave like just getting to hold and interact with one of those snakes again someday.
Well, there's just such cool little critters. We also had like baby alligators and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Those were really, really cool. And we would keep them, we got them like from an alligator farm, and the science center would keep them for a while until they got to a certain size. And then they'd have to go back to the farm. I don't know all the details of it. I was a teenager, so I didn't know all the ins and outs of it, but it was such a fun job. Like, anybody looking to do something exciting, like go to your local museum or your science center and see if they're hiring, because it's such a fun job.
No, it's true. It really is. I remember with the snake, I think it was Jay, our Burmese python, we had him out on we had this sort of low stage, and people would sit back, and at the end of the presentation, like you after they talk, if they, I think it was 3 years old or 4 years old and up, could very carefully with 2 fingers come and touch the snake, but I remember I was sitting out there on the stage with the snake, and these 2 women and their child, who was 3 or 4, like the child came running at the stage because he saw the snake, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna come, see the snake. And I remember the 2 women were sort of talking and approaching with him, and as soon as they actually realized what they were approaching, that there was a large snake on the stage, they literally started screaming.
Oh my gosh.
Like, oh my God, get away, and like pulling the kid back. And I just remember, like, I started talking about a mile a minute, like just trying to not get them to like run away, trying to get them to sit down and like talk to me about the snake. And so I just started, I don't even know what I said, but just talking about the snake, talking about how beautiful, talking about how interesting, doing all this. They eventually sort of calmed down, sat down, started asking questions about the snake, and I'll just never forget, like, why, these snakes we had because they had also, like the praying mantis, been confiscated from someone who couldn't take care of them. So it's not that they'd gone out to, bought a snake to have on display. It was like they'd rescued the snake, and now they were trying to teach people about the snakes using them. And it worked out so well that day, because I'll never forget that those women, by the end of our talk, were sitting there just gazing at the snake, saying, he's so beautiful, oh, he's so amazing. And then at the very end, when they said, can we touch him? Like, I was like, yes, this, and in my mind, I'm like, this is why I'm here. Like, it's to hopefully make someone not freak out about a snake just by seeing them, and have them, I don't know, care a little bit about that animal when they leave.
It's a big, people expect, big, gross, slimy. In reality, they're just like very slow moving snugglers. Yeah. Like, they're not slimy at all, which is a big misconception. But, no, that's awesome. You helped somebody probably with a like minor phobia of snakes, learn more about the animal. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So I'm gonna drag this back to Voltron for a second.
Yes, please. Voltron, yay.
Were you a fan of or were you knowledgeable or a fan, or had at least been aware of the original 80s, I guess, multiple series of Voltron before you started?
When I was young, I think I knew about it, and I think I was like, oh, that seems cool, but I, have to admit I didn't really know it. Like, I think I saw it a couple times, but I wasn't one of those original Uber fans. However, my husband was absolutely an Uber fan of Voltron, like original Voltron. It was literally his favorite show ever. When before, like a couple of years before, Voltron, before I, got cast on Voltron, for one of his birthdays, his aunt had been holding on to his like original Matchbox Voltron figure.
So cool.
Sent it to him for his birthday, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Now we have a giant Voltron in our house. And, little did I know. And so that's how much he loved Voltron. And so when, I get a lot of auditions, and I get a lot of auditions for really cool stuff. But I did, when I had this Voltron audition, I remember I talked to him because I knew he loved Voltron so much. And I remember he said to me something to the effect of like, if you were cast on Voltron, that would be like all my childhood dreams coming true.
Aww.
and then suddenly I was cast on it. And it was fun because he like the night before. I would just get a script the night before, and you know, the script describes all the Voltron action and stuff, which Shay is not involved in the really all that fighting and everything, but to sort of help me visualize it, we sort of came up with a fun routine where my husband, Trevor is his name, he would take like his Voltron, which it like shoots, like the lions shoot, you know, thing, like the heads shoot out, and it's a cool toy. And he would like act out the action that was described in the script, so I could visualize, oh, I see, this is what Voltron's doing at this time. So that was cool for me, and I think it was, let's be real, like even more fun for him.
That's really sweet, though, that not only is he that excited about what you do, that he's like, okay, but we got to act this out, though, and gets his action figure and gets to work. That's really adorable and sweet. Those are some marriage goals right there.
Totally, right? And it's been cool, like, to whenever a new season is released, you know, that it's I want to watch it no matter what, but even though I'm like, I could watch it at, you know, 2 a.m. and like get through the whole series, or, you know,
like 6
season.
episodes each season.
Like, I have, you know, he has a regular full-time job, so like I have to wait for him, because it's like, also it's like our thing is to watch Voltron together, and so that's become a fun tradition.
My husband and I
it's fun, and with Voltron, each season's like 6 or 7 episodes anyway, so it's like
we get through it quickly.
Yeah,
it's not like the original, like season 1, 52 episodes.
Right.
My spouse works 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, so he's gone for 2 weeks and then comes back, and he's almost always gone when Voltron or another show that we love comes out. Oh, no. And like nothing shows how much I love him by like having to like block everything to do with Voltron on all my computers and everything to make sure I don't see anything. So when he gets home, I'm like, I love you. You're great. I'm glad you're home. Let's watch.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. So, you know, Voltron now has become its own beast. 6 seasons, 52 episodes. It's nearing the amount of episodes the original series had, which is kind of an awesome achievement for a revival like this. And of course, it's created its own fandom. Like, my 4-year-old started watching Voltron, and he's trying to explain to me what's going on in 4-year-old words, which is even more confusing than just watching it without like being able to hear it, and if it's just on in the background. But it's adorable. He was trying to tell me the other day about something like the Gyra Empire searching for something. Like, well, I don't know what you're saying because you can't pronounce any of the words right, but it's adorable.
That's awesome.
Because he ran out of Transformer shows, and now he's going on to Voltron because Rescue Bots is done, so now he needed Voltron. Clear jump right there.
Right. I'm in support. My almost 4-year-old has definitely seen Voltron.
Yeah. It's his sister doesn't like it, but she's 2, so it doesn't matter.
She's got. We have time.
She'll get there. Don't worry.
But it's and you know, it's just kind of awesome to see these older series come back in. Not just, you know, sometimes they come back, like say Reboot came back recently and just shatter people. Like, you know, Reboot return was heartbreaking. But Voltron came back and not just took what the old people loved of the old show, but also added to it and made it something new and modern, which really, you know, made it its own thing. So now people can like both, and it really worked. And I just love how that can happen now, especially because of, you know, Netflix and their work with Dreamworks, where Dreamworks has just brought back so much stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, my husband was really, you know, he was excited that Voltron was being remade, but then I was nervous about like, well, but is he gonna think it's cool, like when he actually sees it, or is it gonna be like, that's not like the original? And he, from the start, he was like, no, this is cool. He was like, and I've actually heard people say this, but he said it to me too. He was like, it's how I remember it, like as a kid, but cooler, you know. And it's like those things when you're a kid and they seem really cool, but then when you see them as an adult, they're maybe a little rinky dink. I think he had the worry that like it might that maybe what he was remembering like wasn't as cool. I don't think he's gone back and watched the original episodes to compare, but I think he was worried that it wouldn't seem as cool now that he was an adult, and he was like, no, it's really awesome. So I was really excited. You know, he's sort of my my fan that I'm, most interested in seeing, like, what's he gonna think? And he was excited. So that's when I knew there was something there.
As the ultra fan, does he ever get exasperated with the fact that that Netflix likes doing 6-episode seasons or shorter?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think, I'm not going to comment too much on that because they're doing what they're doing, but yeah, I mean,
it makes it easier to binge it in 2 nights. That's for sure.
And Voltron's never been as outrageous as season 1 of Castlevania, where you're like, oh, we're going to make a show instead of a movie, 4 episodes. Oh.
Which was also an amazing show.
Amazing show. It finished, and you're like, and
the rest is. My husband also loved Voltron as a kid, but he's 9 years older than me, so he was in the thick of it as a child, as far as Voltron being on TV, and it missed me, and I wasn't the demographic they were shooting for anyhow. So I had very little. I knew it existed, but I had very little, memory of Voltron. I think I have an older sibling who might have been into it. So when the reboot came out, my husband started watching it, and he calls me at work and he's like, I'm going to stop watching this because when you get home, you're going to want to watch this. And I said, okay. So we came home and watched, pretty much the whole first season over a weekend, and it was wonderful. And, I said, what was the original one like? He was like, they put it on Netflix too. Oh boy. It's a little different of a show. And, this is the historian in me. I was like, okay, I need to know more about this show. And I actually looked up the whole story of how it came to be on American television. And the short version of it is back then they would have conventions where broadcasting companies would come and buy cartoons from other countries, dub over them in English, and edit them to fit whatever standards they had to fit to be a kid's show, and put it on TV. And so they ordered this show. They did voiceovers, they edited it, and months later, the executive who bought it came into the studio and watched it and said, this isn't the show I bought. And they were like, oh, well, too late now. So, and that's how we went from the Japanese cartoon Beast King Go Lion to Voltron, Defender of the Universe. So anyhow, that's me being like, I need to know more, typity type, and then, few hours later, I'm like, okay, so I have a presentation, and I'm this far from doing Voltron at Nerd Night soon. I'm being like, let's talk about Voltron, because if I go there and talk about propaganda films during World War II again, they're just gonna shove me out the door, and that'll be the last time ever welcome back at Nerd Night.
I definitely vote for Voltron at Nerd Night.
Voltron at Nerd Night.
I think Voltron would be great.
I'm gonna propose it.
I went to a presentation kind of like that where someone was presenting on, I think they were presenting on Sailor Moon. I'm like, why are you presenting on Sailor Moon? They're presenting on how different the actual show was to what we got in America.
Oh, geez, not
it's
even
they changed genders of entire characters.
This one that's a couple are now cousins. I'm like, that's not.
And then they're like,
great.
hey, look, this person has clothing now. Like, that person never had. Oh boy. That's the only danger I have now is when I watch shows that I loved on Toonami as a kid. Or, old Gundam shows, or even Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z is not as much because there's more blood. But, some of those shows, if you buy them now on DVD, oh, I love that as a kid. You buy them uncensored now, and you didn't know how much they changed them to be on Cartoon Network back in the late 80s, early 90s. Then you watch it now, you're like, oh, that person wore clothes when I was a kid. I couldn't. That was on 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
So, getting to do a voice on this, not only a voice of a really cool character. Shay is awesome. Was it cool when did you ever get to see the SDCC poster from last year or a couple years ago, maybe it was, and Shay's on one of them?
Yeah, I have it.
That's super cool. You ever do that? That's me. It's me.
Yes, totally. Yes, I had to. Yes, yes to all those questions. No, I have. She's actually in two of the posters.
Them. Oh, so cool.
I think one of them's maybe from the New York Comic-Con. I don't remember, but there was the first season poster, and then she's on the second season poster too. And I have both of those because I was so excited. So yeah, I mean, she's an amazing character. I have to truly, I loved her from the audition. When you're auditioning for stuff, there are the characters that you audition for where you're like, I feel this, this is me, and I feel that other times when I don't book the character, but I did feel it for Shay. I felt it very much for Shay. And I just remember like I'll never forget, like just in the what do they call the character descriptions, they sort of said she's something like she has a gentle heart but with great bravery, and like dreams of seeing the sky, and an alien rock-like creature,
And also an alien rock alien.
Yeah. And there was no picture of her, which is, I think, very good, because I think if I had seen a picture, like I never saw a picture of her until ADR. Like I'd already recorded that whole first season before I ever saw a picture of what she looked like. And I'm afraid that if I had seen the picture of what she looked like, I would have come up with some other voice for her. And so it worked out, that I didn't try to mess up the voice by seeing her. I just, I was basically just basing it on that pure heart and the great bravery and all that. And so I loved her, but it was also like one of her lines, she says something like, tell me, what is the sky like? And for someone who for years has worked at the observatory, where the first line of our show is, we tell stories about the sky here.
Aw, that's so poetic.
I just felt like this connection to the character, in a way that I'd never, I don't know if I'd felt that to another cartoon character I'd auditioned for before. And so I do feel like it was, she was my character. I've always loved sort of that night sky, and to have this character who dreams of seeing the sky, just it just moved me just in that audition description. I have a constellation tattoo on my body. I'm all in with that night sky thing.
That's really lovely, and I know I've used that word already, but I mean it.
So anyway, so I feel really privileged to have gotten to play that part, and she's just so special. I think it's not a gigantic part, but for me, I thought it was she made an impact, and it's been neat to talk to fans through Twitter and things like that, who seem to have really grabbed onto her as well, and that was a surprise, but it's been really cool.
I think it was Kimberly Brooks, who does the voice of Allura, also said she didn't get to see a picture of her character till, I don't remember, because it was well into voice recording, until it was over. And it's also another amazing character, and but I asked Neil that, Kaplan, who does the voices Archon, he was like, oh no, I saw pictures, and I was like, come on.
Well, that's what I've heard. I've heard some people who were like, oh, you didn't see a picture? I'm like, no.
Was I supposed to ask?
I do feel kind of like that. And literally, I had an image in my mind of what she looked like, and it was so off from what she ended up looking like. I'm also kind of like, why did I even, why is that where I went with this character? But yeah, so I've heard that some people knew what their people looked like and some didn't. So I guess I should have asked.
When it comes to fan stuff for a project like Voltron, though, I know one thing that I love hearing people talk about is how they get all of a sudden the action figures of themselves. But when it comes to projects like this, the better stuff is probably the fan created stuff, the fan art, the fan sculpted things, or the fan projects that they show you and have you sign and look at conventions and so on. Have you gotten to see some cool fan stuff of Shay from
absolutely
art and everything that you just love?
Yeah, absolutely. I love on Tumblr and DeviantArt, and then I see it on Twitter as well. They're it's tapering off a little, as we haven't seen Shay much, but especially in the first year of Voltron, there was just a ton of really cool Shay stuff, Shay Hunk, Shay Allura, Shay modern day stuff. It's been wild to see, and I love it. And I've tried to sort of tweet out things that I think are cool too, and so then I sort of end up connecting with that artist a little bit when I do that, because a lot of times then they'll write to me, and that's been really cool. I saw some little Shay Hunk plushies that someone had made. Those were super cute. Right before the show, we actually have, it's not Shay fan art, but we have some Voltron sort of fan art that my husband bought for me. It was right before the show premiered. There was a show at some art gallery in LA, and it was sort of an official event where they had different artists had been given glimpses of the show and had created art based on this new show that was about to come. And I was in a play, I think, so I wasn't able to go to the opening of it, but my husband and his cousin, who's also a super Voltron fan, they went and they got me this it's like a print, and it says Battle for Balmera, and it's got like a I'm sorry, I don't know the artist's name, so I'm sorry about that. But you can see the Balmera in the background, and then Voltron, and so that was like before the show even premiered. So that was
so
super
cool.
exciting.
How cool is that?
Yeah, and it was a good gift. He did a good job, like surprising me with that.
My husband.
That's fantastic. So we gotta begin wrapping this up really soon. So we'll let Kaela go.
Oh, I was gonna
Kaela,
say,
do yours. And
my
then we'll begin wrapping
husband
this up.
is his favorite. He has a favorite art style called Outrun. It's this like very 80s bright colors, super cool. And there's an artist named James White who is the guy who like coined that term. And he did a Voltron poster. I think right before the show got rebooted. And it's just the coolest thing. And I managed to hunt down a copy for Christmas last year. And that's one of his favorite art pieces in our home. But my last question for you is, so what are you excited about right now? Like something you're doing, a friend's doing? What are you reading, watching? Like, what are you excited about right now?
Oh, well, I'm excited about planning a 4-year-old birthday party that's coming up very soon in my life.
How fun, yay!
And so there's going to be like fairies and a carousel in Griffith Park and things like that. So, that's sort of the mom side of me. I'm excited about, I already mentioned the Mary McScary that's coming out at some point, that animated film. It's, I think, super cute. I am...
Wow.
Whoa.
Oh my goodness.
Who is
Sorry,
that?
we haven't had rain. That's thunder and rain. We haven't had rain since last year.
Can you please send some to Los Angeles? Because it's like 95 degrees here right now.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't had rain in Arizona for a long enough time that we had no camping, grilling, fireworks, or anything of the sorts on 4th of July or Memorial Day, so we're happy.
To piggyback on that, I'm in Anchorage, Alaska, and it was 91 degrees yesterday. So... Whew. Sorry, continue with Mary McScary. I don't want to leave you hanging on that one.
Yeah. No, I have a couple video games that I can't say anything about, but, at some point I'll be able to. I'm excited about audiobooks. I do this series. It's called the Whatever After series by Sarah Mlanovsky, and we just released the 12th audiobook in that series. It's like a New York Times best-selling series, and so I'm always excited to do that one, and we have one coming up in the fall as well for that. So I don't know. I think that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about being able to do all these things, I guess, together, and be able to plan like a birthday party and have all that time to audition, while one kid naps, and maybe book something and go do that, and then come back and sort of live my life and have it all sort of work together so that no part is completely taking over everything. And I don't know, I guess that's what I'm excited about.
That's awesome.